Yeah, so I'm going to be giving a new account of conspiracy theories. I toyed with a few different ways of opening, but I think the best way is just kind of put my cards on the table straight away. So I'm pretty sympathetic to particularism, but I do not like the minimalist definition. And I, don't really like generalism much, but I quite like some of what you might call the generalist accounts of conspiracy theories, and what I kind of exactly mean by that, I guess, will become more clear as we go through. So this is my outline. I'm going to give some historical context, which is basically going to be a brief retelling of the panel this morning. So I was pretty upset when I came in. Everyone was talking about the stuff that I was going to talk about, but I now think that maybe I can complement it nicely or something. Then I'm going to lay out 4 theoretical desiderata that I think an account of conspiracy theory should be able to match. And then I'm going to assess what I take to be the 2 main extant accounts of conspiracy theories in the literature before proposing my view, and then I'll finish. So, historical context, let's go. Conspiracy theory, I think, has been dominated by 2 main debates, probably. A debate of definition, so what is conspiracy theory? That's kind of been a big thing. It's been fairly heated, I would say. And then a battle between generalism and particularism, which has been very, very heated discussion, on whether conspiracy theories are to be assessed as a class, usually it's bad in some way, right? Epistemically faulty, irrational, whatever. Or to be assessed on their own merits, although someone was saying earlier, maybe there's 2 different ways of looking at it, but whatever, something like that. But kind of weirdly or surprisingly, debate seems to have kind of died down recently, right? Everyone sort of says, well, no, the minimalist definition is fine, and particularism is obviously right. I call this the neutral definition in this talk instead of the minimalist definition. I have no idea why I did that, but that's what it means. I just mean the minimalist one. And yeah, particularists have all but declared victory over the generalists, right? They're sort of it's over, generalists are stupid, we're done. But what hasn't received much discussion, I think, is these 2 debates are intrinsically linked. So, I felt like they hadn't received much discussion, and it seemed to get talked about a lot this morning. So I feel like an idiot, but it wasn't talked about much until this morning, I swear. So I think it's not surprising that both of these debates have simultaneously lulled, and that's because every scholar who endorses particularism seems to also endorse the neutral definition. Or I could find Cody as an exception. He was particularist, but he thought conspiracy theories were against official explanations. But other than that, I couldn't really find any others. And at least as a general claim, I think this is probably true. And on the other hand, every scholar who says something about generalism tends to have their own sort of pejorative account of conspiracy theories that they simultaneously defend and endorse, right? So, there's a million examples of these, right? Sam's capitalized conspiracy theories have 5 different pejorative conditions on them. There's Levy's contra relevant epistemic authorities condition, Mandick's proper secrecy condition, and Schaub's heterodox condition, and so on, right? All these people who are generalists, at the beginning, they quickly slip in, by the way, they're all bad. So, it makes sense that this happened, right? So I think all this was basically entailed. Maybe that's quite strong, but what I kind of mean is that the neutral definition becoming orthodoxy basically guaranteed the particularist turn, because you can't say anything else without sounding crazy, right? If you say all conspiracy theories are normatively neutral, but they're also all bad, that's completely incoherent, right? You obviously can't make that as a claim. And a non-neutral definition adding a different condition will probably require a generalist endorsement, because again, it would be pretty incoherent to say, yeah, by definition, conspiracy theories are rational, but they're all still to be individually assessed on their own merits, right? That also doesn't make any sense, because then you also just assess them as a class then. So what? Why do I think this matters? Well, I think the main upshot has been that argument between the 2 sides has been quite insignificant, because what's happened is that everyone starts on drastically different grounds. So, the generalist says this thing and the particularist says this thing, but they're not even agreeing on what they're talking about in the first place. So what was the point? They're not even talking to each other. They're just talking about 2 different things, And so I think that's bad, right? So with all this in mind, I'm here to, bridge the gap or whatever, and propose a new account of conspiracy theories that I don't think entails either and can maybe be read on both grounds. So therefore, peace among peoples, right? How nice would that be? And yeah, the big upshot would of course be the common ground to begin sort of the arguments on. But before we get into that, I guess I'm going to lay out my 4 theoretical desiderata, which Keith mentioned in the panel that it would be nice if there was, desiderata for an account. So here we go, I'm doing it. So before we get into that, right, we should get clear what do we actually want an account of conspiracy theories to do. So I've got my 4 desiderata. I think these are pretty uncontroversial, hopefully, but maybe people disagree. But they are kind of ultimately shaped around my goal of sort of appeasing both the particularist and the generalist. So if you kind of think that's a stupid aim or not important or worthwhile, then you might just not care about this. And I'm okay with that, you know. So first one, extensional adequacy. I think this is, you know, pretty classic, right? An account of conspiracy theory should match as closely as possible our intuitions on what counts as conspiracy theory. I think, like, you know, that's just true for accounts in general, right? They should be kind of extensionally adequate, pretty good. You know, shouldn't lose anyone here, hopefully, but I do kind of think that this probably means no official account of 9/11 for me. I think that that shouldn't be included, just my intuition, but I do think that. And no surprise birthday parties either. Sorry. Yeah, not a fan of that. So that's kind of, you know, okay, I've lost the room. Okay, so the next thing I think as well, so that's my first one, extensional adequacy. The second one is what I'm calling pejorative explanation. So I'm saying this is an account of conspiracy theory should be able to explain why the term conspiracy theory has negative connotations, but without actually being pejorative. And you can kind of see like my aims here, right? Because in the first part, I'm sort of appeasing the generalist because I want to say, look, here's why, you know, everyone might sort of think conspiracy theories are bad. But then in the second part, I'm kind of appeasing the particulars, right? Because I think, you know, we don't want to actually just say, make it a pejorative definition, because then we just collapse into generalism, right? So I'll just repeat that there. I think this is hard to strike this balance, obviously, because you kind of have to be like, here's why it's bad. It's not like inherently bad. That's kind of hard to do, but I think it's possible, hopefully. So that's my second desideratum. The third one is what I'm calling temporal consideration. So I say an account of conspiracy theory should be able to explain why something might once have counted as a conspiracy theory, but no longer does. So, for example, you know, right, this is the classic one, pre-1973, Watergate would have been considered a conspiracy theory, right? But then after it was exposed, intuitively, it seems like it's no longer considered so, right? And obviously, as well, no, this could probably be subsumed under one, right, extensional adequacy. But I actually think this is like a really nice point. I think it would be really good if an account could deal with this. So I think it's better listed separately for clarity. So that's my third desideratum. And then finally, this is the non-entailment requirement, which is me just basically explicitly saying what I think is important. So an account of conspiracy theory shouldn't entail either generalism or particularism. I think that this is kind of an important point because, again, like I said, you know, for all the reasons that I've discussed, you know, it's just pointless. If your account just says one of the two is true, then we're not discussing anything anymore. We're not arguing with each other. Everyone's just starting to play different grounds. So your account should, you know, start in somewhere kind of middling and then go out from there. You know, so I say here, like generalism or particularism, or, you know, maybe some secret third thing that we haven't worked out yet, will presumably fall out of any definition eventually, right? The final analysis, presumably one of the two will be true. But I don't think this should be kind of like preordained in the way I feel like it has been in the past. You know, like Sam's account of conspiracy theories, he's obviously going to be generalist, and I think the same way with the neutral definition, it's obviously going to be particularist, and that just seems wrong to me, I think. So briefly recap, we've got extensional adequacy. That's about you know, matching our intuitions as closely as possible. Then we've got pejorative explanation, which is why people think it's bad, but crucially not actually bad, like, you know, not inherently bad. Then we've got temporal consideration, which is about how something seems to like shift out of the category. And then finally, the non-entailment requirement. Obviously, on their own, these desiderata don't necessarily advocate for a new account, right? You know, maybe an extant one meets them. So that's my next job then. I've got to show why all the extant ones are rubbish. So that's where we're going now. So assessing two extant accounts, here we go. So the neutral definition, or again, as it's more commonly called, the minimalist definition, but trying to be unique and cool, so I call it neutral definition. So this is like a conspiracy theory. It's just a theory that posits the existence of a conspiracy, where the conspiracy is a salient cause of some event. And then a conspiracy is, you know, there exists or existed some agents with a plan, steps have been taken to minimize public awareness, and some end as was desired by nature. Right? We're all pretty familiar with this. So now we can go through and score it on my desiderata and see how it does. So let's start with the first one, extensional adequacy. So that was, remember what that was. How does it do? Pretty poorly, I think. Unfortunately, it clearly just countenances way too many things, which I don't like. I think that that's just not good, right? It says, you know, again, I kind of already said this, but, you know, surprise birthday parties, official accounts. I think, you know, in natural language, which again, you know, some people just say, well, I don't care about natural language, but I do. And I think that this is, they shouldn't do this. This seems like a mistake to me. You know, it would be, you know, my account of seawater includes that chair, and we're all supposed to go, yeah, that's fine. It's just, it's insane. A surprise birthday party isn't a conspiracy theory. And I think there's a few other cases that you can probably come up with as kind of examples. But I mean, these are pretty big ones. I think it's not like they're even highly engineered like Gettier cases or something. These are just kind of standard problems that I think they count as into. So, given it a red here, there's a traffic light system going on. You'll see more of this later. So, what about the pejorative explanation then? Didn't do very well in extension adequacy, I think. Pejorative explanations, that was kind of explain, why conspiracy theory has negative connotations without actually being pejorative. How to do? I don't think it does very well in this either. I mean, obviously, it's obviously not pejorative, so that's good, I guess, but it really just can't explain why conspiracy theories have negative connotations, part because it's not built into the account at all, because it's entirely normatively neutral, right? So, so we can't explain that. So, I'm giving it a red again here. I was tempted to go for an orange, but I decided, it's red. It's red, Of course, it's not pejorative, but it needs to explain. It needs to explain as well. That's important. So, nothing's done very well there either. Temporal explanation. Once again, it can't explain this, right? It sort of says once a conspiracy theory, always a conspiracy theory. It doesn't really have any way of shifting or changing. I think advocates of this kind would be fine with that, but again, I think it would be really nice if our account could explain this, because it seems like something that does happen, right? Just in like language, and you talk about stuff, you would say, well, that was a conspiracy theory, and now it's not. We're potentially seeing this happen right now with lab leak theory. It seems to be sort of increasing in credibility. There's a BBC News article about it yesterday, so it seems really credible. But it would be nice if we could explain this, right? Why something can shift categories. I think Brian talked about this earlier as well. So doesn't have to do well on this front either. And finally, non-entailment requirement. You can probably guess what I'm going to say about this one. You might be sensing a theme here on how it does. Obviously, it clearly entails particularism, right? And I think that this is a mistake. Now, again, you could just think, I don't care about this, and that would be fine. But I think that this is bad. I think, the definition shouldn't be literally kind of requiring even generals and particulars. So obviously, didn't do too well there, right? But that's a 0 out of 4. But at the end of the day, I'm not just ragging on the neutral definition here. I don't think the leading generalist account, or what I take to be the leading generalist account, doesn't fare all that much better. And I do still think the neutral definition has an important role to play, but that will come up later. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to, this is what I take to be the leading generalist account, or the best one I like the most. It's Harris's 2022 account. So he says we may define conspiracy theories as theories that allege conspiracies and conflict with the claims of the relevant epistemic authorities. So the first conjunct here is just the neutral definition, and then the second one is this contra relevant epistemic authorities claim. Which is also, it's kind of similar to Levy's one, and in a lot of sense, I think this account of conspiracy theories is quite like Levy's bad beliefs, which I think is an interesting connection, even though Levy isn't really talking about conspiracy theories and bad beliefs. It's sort of a separate thing, but I think there's a lot of overlap. So now we can go through and we can score Hass's account now. So let's look at that. So again, we'll start with our extension adequacy. How does it do? I think it does pretty well, actually, right? It explains official accounts pretty nicely. So it can tell you why an official account won't be counted because it's not contra relevant epistemic authorities. So I think that that's pretty good. Doesn't seem to include surprise birthday parties either, I don't think. So that seems nice. But I do think it has a sort of democracy-centered bias, which someone mentioned earlier. I thought I'd come up with that. I'm like, oh, no chance. So, conspiracies obviously happen in autocracies, right? Possibly even more than in democracies. But the proponents of those conspiracy theories will presumably be the relevant epistemic authorities in a lot of those cases. So that seems like it's going to get a lot of things wrong. I feel like Chernobyl here, right? It seems like it was the relevant authorities in that case that were sort of doing the conspiracizing, right? And so in general, the overall problem, I think, is that it just seems to sort of reject the possibility that epistemic authorities can conspire. And I think that just seems mistaken because they obviously can. And indeed, I think that possibly the biggest or most important conspiracy theories would be the ones where they're the ones conspiring. So I think that that's not a very good result. So again, our first orange, I believe, though. There you go. So yeah, did official accounts pretty well. So you earned an orange there. What about George's explanation? Oh, sorry, I didn't do an extra slide for this one. So I think it doesn't do terrible here, right? Because on the one hand, it does sort of explain why we might just view them in a negative light, right? Because it says, well, they're against what the experts believe, or the people that we generally take to be pretty smart. So, that seems like it's explaining that quite well, but I think I just worry that it just is pejorative though, because I think once you say that, you kind of have to be like, and so they're all bad and probably wrong. So I don't think it nails the second part. So if you remember, I don't know if everyone kind of does remember the condition, but I was saying, should explain why they have negative connotations, but crucially without actually being pejorative. And I think I just worry that this account just still is pejorative, and that's why it very likely probably kind of guarantees generalism, but I mean, that's still to come up. Temporal consideration actually does this really nicely, right? Because, as soon as something can be a conspiracy theory, and then once it becomes endorsed by, the epistemic authorities, then it no longer is one. So that seems like quite a good way of tracking how a conspiracy theory might sort of jump in and out of the, the different, categories, whatever you want to say. So it does that pretty well. And finally, non-entailment requirement. Don't think it does very well here for the reasons I sort of mentioned when I was talking about pejorative explanation. I think it just kind of ends up being pejorative. So it seems to look to entail generalism, which again, as I've already said, I think is mistaken. I don't think we could be one account to do that. Caveat, I don't think Harris cares about this too much. I don't know, he can probably say it for himself, but there's like a line in the paper where he says, I'm only looking at like kind of, what I take to be an important subclass of conspiracy theories. So he's not kind of trying to do like an all-encompassing account, but we should want to be able to come up with an all-encompassing account, right? I think that would be nice, if we had an account that explained all and not just, I'm going to look at some little ones I think are interesting. Plus when, when people argue with each other in this literature, I think that they're not usually looking at it in terms of like, I'm focusing on this little bit and you're focusing on that little bit. Like they tend to be arguing against each other, right? They assume that they're sort of talking about the same thing. So I don't know how much of a kind of get out of jail clause this would be, just saying, I'm only looking at this little thing. I think we kind of might just say that as a little hedge, but kind of in the background, we kind of do think we're talking about the whole thing. Like every sort of conspiracy theory and offering up a sort of holistic account. So what are takeaways then from the two accounts that I ruthlessly failed in my test? So neutral definition also didn't do too well. Harris's account did do better, but I don't think it was perfect. But I think something in this vicinity could be what we're looking for. And this is where I was talking about the neutral definition still having an important role to play, I think. I think we're looking at something like neutral definition and X. And in this sense, I think there's quite a nice parallel here with like, the theories of knowledge, right? So it was like JTB, and then it was JTB and something else. And, obviously that did ultimately fail, but, it still, it kind of looks like that, right? People were adding in new things. They started with JTB, it was probably not right, but it made look like a nice groundwork. And then you could maybe add like a little condition, safety, sensitivity, whatever, and that would kind of fix the problem. So I think that this is a nice thing. This is what Harris's account did, right? So I think if we come up with something else for X instead of contra relevant epistemic authorities, then maybe we can solve all the problems. So it's my turn now. I get to propose my account. So here we go. So as a brief outline, this is it right here. Conspiracy theories are theories that allege conspiracies and for which there is a contemporaneous lack of easily available evidence supporting the theory. And my contention here is that this does pretty well. So the first conjunct, again, is just the neutral definition, as I was talking about. And then the second conjunct obviously has quite a lot going on. Well, just kind of big words in there and stuff. But that will be explained through the desiderata. But I've also put it like at the top there, just in case anyone forgets what it is, because I realize I only go through it. Neutral definition, and for which there's a lack of contemporaneous lack of easily available evidence supporting the theory. Okay, so now let's rank it on the desiderata that I came up with. Let's see what it does. So first of all, extensional adequacy. I think it does pretty well. That's good. Birthday parties I think are probably excluded. I just think this is like the dodgiest case for it, because you might kind of be like, well, the evidence isn't easily available. But I think the evidence is sort of easily available in the sense you could just sort of ask and like press, right? You could get it in a way that like, the evidence for like the moon landing being fake presumably isn't very easily available, because to get that you would need like high clearance and American security or something like that. It's clearly like kind of different in that sense. I think special accounts are excluded as well, right? Because there's a large amount of easily available evidence supporting, say, the official account of 9/11, right? So we get rid of official accounts. But it also does include paradigms. So I think an important thing to note here is that it doesn't matter about evidence that might be going against the conspiracy. All that matters is evidence in support. So like QAnon has a lot of evidence against it, right? Enough that we can probably just disregard it. But there's still a lack of easily available evidence for the theory. I think that this is an important point. So this is completely consistent with there actually being no evidence in support of it, right? QAnon is wrong. So, we know that. So there isn't going to be evidence supporting it. But I still think that is concluded by a lack of easily available supporting evidence, right? And it's also consistent with, there being evidence supporting the theory that just has yet to be discovered for other ones as well. So I think, extension adequacy looks pretty good. I think it does all the things that, we would want kind of to do, hopefully. So I'm going to give a green here for my first one. So next up, pejorative explanation. How do we do here? Again, I think we're doing pretty well. The evidence isn't easily available. So in some sense, that does kind of explain why you might have a fairly dim view, right? The evidence is hard to come by. So, it might kind of be like, well, that makes me have low credence in it. That makes me think that, on the balance, it's probably not the case, something like that. Or right now, I don't believe it, or, something along those lines. So I think it explains that quite well. But I don't think it is actually pejorative because, if you just think about like scientific theories or something, there might be some kind of thing, I don't know, expose my ignorance here, but I think there's, like string theory is sort of wishy-washy right now or something, it's presumably got, evidence that's very hard to come by, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, right? It just means we maybe need to do a lot of stuff to find out about it, or you can just use like a historical example of some sciencey thing. So I don't think it is actually saying there's anything sort of inherently bad. It's just saying, it's just hard to find it. I don't think that's actually pejorative. So it doesn't actually say there is a lack of evidence. It just says, we might need to do a bit of work, we might need to do a bit of digging to find out. And again, sort of similar point that I made in the last slide, I think, but this is still compatible with there actually being no evidence in support, right? Presumably the hardest kind of evidence to find is no evidence at all, right? But crucially, I really don't think it necessitates any epistemic flaw. So I think that we do sort of get what we want from my pejorative explanation desideratum, which was, remember why people have negative connotations, but crucially don't be pejorative. I think we do get there, hopefully. So we got another green, things are looking up, we're getting there. Temporal consideration, and it has a really nice explanation of this, I think. So that's why I have the word contemporaneous in there, right? Because I think what I'm trying to say here by this is that, when an explanation of events is called conspiracy theory, I think at the time of that designation, there is a lack of easily available evidence, right? That's the whole point. So then if you look at, pre-1973, right, when Watergate may have been considered a conspiracy theory, there was a contemporaneous lack of easily available evidence, right? The average person couldn't go out there and just find out about it, That's why we would have considered it a conspiracy theory. But then as journalists shed light on it, all of a sudden the evidence actually became very easily available. And so that's why the Watergate shifted from being considered a conspiracy theory and sort of moved out of that category, right? So I think that that's a pretty nice explanation. So that's not green, did so well. So we're nearly there now. And finally, non-attainment requirement. I'm not too sure about this one. I think it maybe satisfies, right? Because on the one hand, maybe a generalist could say, well, right, your account obviously supports generalism because it clearly licenses a general suspicion of conspiracy theories because there's a lack of easily available evidence. So that means we should just, sort of be generally very skeptical. On the other hand, I think maybe the particulars could say, right, your account, the fact that the evidence isn't easily available means we need to investigate and find out, whether there actually is evidence or not, right? We need to do some work and, see what happens. So I think this is a pretty good result, right? I think the fact that you could read my account on either ground is kind of like a boon for what my project is, right? Because it surely means that it doesn't entail either, if you can presumably read it in sort of either way. And so maybe then hopefully it could, somehow appeal to both, right? And how nice would that be? So surprise, surprise, that's 4 out of 4. So pretty good as far as I'm concerned. And so the big upshot here, right? This is what I was getting at earlier, but if everyone says, Rory, your account's right, that's nice for me, but more importantly, of course, it means that the debate can begin on the same grounds, right? And I actually genuinely think that this is quite important because I find it weird when I read a lot of the literature and people are just talking about different things when they make other points. So, we don't want that, right? We want to begin on the same ground and then from there, maybe we can work out whether particularism is true or whether, you know, generalism's true or whatever's happening, right? I don't think that should be something that's guaranteed the moment you put in, you know, section one of your paper. This is the account I'll be working with, you know, because that's silly. So yeah, that's me. Well, I missed my thank you slide.